Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board. This is our regularly scheduled meeting this evening. As always, we begin with introductions, and I'll start with Dave.
Dave Pierce, I'm an alternate member.
Colleen Mayu, regular member.
Barbara Griffin.
Brian Mazer.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Scott Ozana, Town Engineer.
Collis Adams, I'm the Select Board's representative.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Will anyone not be attending tonight, Joanne?
Gail and Phil.
All right, since Phil will not be here, David, you'll be voting on all matters. Okay, we'll start with the minutes from June 22nd of 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Barbara, seconded by Kimberly, to approve without corrections, as presented. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
Abstain.
Motion-
Abstaining.
2 abstentions, motion passes. Okay, we will act on the next one, request for a recommendation to the Select Board regarding land acquisition for the town to retain ownership of the open space, map 10, lot 10, 0S, which is open space on Tenny Road. Joanne, there's nothing really important to know about this other than this is the other part of a proposed subdivision?
Yes, this is the Tenny Road subdivision, and as you have seen, the open space is in the rear of the property. It was originally proposed to go first to a homeowners association and after that to the PLC. The PLC didn't have the staff to get involved with it at this time, so David Neiman of the Conservation Commission went out with a member of the Open Space Committee and did a site walk, and they highly recommended that the town pursue this land and brought it to the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission voted to make a recommendation. The Select Board has also been advised. David is here tonight if you have questions. So the Select Board has scheduled a public hearing, and they are now asking the Planning Board to make a recommendation as well. The Conservation Commission feels that the land is important for the town to retain, and the owner of this subdivision will be donating the land, so there's no cost involved.
Okay, board members?
Mr. Chair.
Dave?
Joanne, when the applicant was before the board with open space to be managed by the homeowner association, there was a public access on the east and the west side of the house lots. The town conservation easement, the only access is now on the west side?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Although the plan has not been changed at this point. They're coming back to you on your next meeting on the 27th. So we will talk to them about that. But the Conservation Commission would prefer to enter the property off to the left side.
I only mentioned that because there was a homeowner concern and a
Yes.
butter about the closeness of a public path.
They've removed that path
So
from
that's why I
Yeah.
want to ensure that the only public access is on the west side.
Correct. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Isn't this the preliminary? We haven't approved the site plan, so we don't actually know what we're asking the town to take interest in, right?
It would be the entire piece of the open space. I believe it's roughly 33 acres or thereabouts.
But we haven't approved the subdivision plan, right?
Correct. That's coming into you at your next meeting.
So we don't know the specifics of where the access is going to be and a lot of little details. So maybe we should put this off until we have something more concrete to look at, and then we can take a vote and recommendation to the board at a later date.
I'm not sure of the date of the Select Board's hearing. Maybe David.
Well, didn't they just meet Monday night? Wasn't this on the agenda Monday night?
They did, but they have to then hold public hearings.
I don't want to turn this into a long discussion, so we're going to either act on it quickly or we're going to table it until the
No,
next
Tim,
meeting.
this is important. We need to have a discussion. If David's here, I'd like to hear from David.
I'd like to
I'm
avoid
sorry, I
that.
know we have a big agenda, but this is an important topic. Can we at least have David, since he's here, give us a presentation tonight about what we're talking about?
He can have 2 minutes. We're going to make it very short. We're not going to turn this into a long-winded discussion.
I disagree. I think this is an important point. Barbara and I have spoken on this in the past. The town's taking ownership of an easement or a fee simple property that we don't do a very good job with stewarding and maintaining the open space areas that we have. So I don't question the need to have this in preservation. I question our taking that responsibility on. And since David's here, I would like to at least hear from David.
Okay, David, please.
David Neiman, Conservation Commission. Yeah, went on, did a sidewalk with an open space member, and this is actually a really, really nice piece of property. It has a very mature hardwood forest, unusual in Goffstown, the state of maturity, the development of the canopy, even a handful of old growth trees on it. This is not something that was turned over to a homeowners association and get logged. That would be a terrible loss. The public can enjoy this. We can put in a trail without cost, acquiring the land without cost. I don't see what the objections are. I understand it hasn't been approved yet. Of course, if it hasn't been approved, then it wouldn't happen if the subdivision wasn't approved. I mean, that's just pretty straightforward. This is just getting the hearing. The 4114A process is whether the selectmen would choose to accept this property if it's donated. So we're not getting ahead of things, I don't believe. And we started it when the Conservation Commission reviewed this project. You know, we were under the impression it was going to the PLC and it would be well protected. That was what was presented to us from the beginning. That's the basis of our recommendations, is that this would be well protected. And when we found out it wasn't going to be, well, that was a different kettle of fish. As far as the stewardship aspect of it, we are working on improving the stewardship. We have a discussion actually going on with the select board regarding that and the town administrator, because we think it's very important too. Furthermore, every time these pieces go to homeowners association and the town imposes a conservation easement, which, you know, this board has done many, many times, those also have an obligation for stewardship, and that stewardship isn't being done. And that is far, far, far more property than all the town-owned conservation land put together, which is about 300 acres. The amount of area that this board has put into conservation easements without doing the stewardship is over 700 acres. So we have a problem that as a group, as a team, as a whole town, we need to address, and we're actually trying to get the wheels rolling on that.
Thank you, David. Questions for David from board members?
Yeah, and if I could, Tim, I'll reinforce that. The Conservation Commission talked about this at their last meeting, and understand that we need to do a better job of stewarding those easements for which we have responsibility. And so it's an action item, and the Conservation Commission is going to be pursuing that as we move forward.
Does the board need a recommendation tonight with a yay or nay recommendation for procedural purposes?
The select board will be voting on this on July 31st.
Okay. Barbara, you're up.
I'm just going to say that I have a real problem with this because this is just another evidence of how this has gotten out of control as far as monitoring and maintenance and the amount of acreage we have. You know, we just heard that there'd be a trail at no cost. We've already got stuff that's supposed to have trails that hasn't happened, parking areas that are supposed to have happened. And we have an open space conservation plan project evaluation form, which has not been done. So it is a bigger discussion. I agree that this isn't probably the time to have it, but we have mixed our open space ordinance with the open space committee, with what conservation is trying to do. And as far as I'm concerned, this property is part of evidence to show it's not working very well. Essentially, we have requirements for development of property at a certain acreage that are forcing this type of an acquisition because nobody wants a homeowners association anymore. So they want to donate this town, get the tax credits for it, and help fund the project development where otherwise the project would not be getting developed. because we have no economic feasibility for open space in this. So, you know, I understand the selectmen, this memo we have indicates that there's, this says, I can't tell exactly, public hearings 7:10, 7:24, vote 8:7. I don't know if that's on this. But nobody knows what they're doing. The discussion about stewardship has been going on at conservation for years. And this is not going to be without cost. I mean, David just told us, we've got hundreds of acres between ownership and conservation easements.
But what conservation has, we are doing work on it, like the Page Hill properties. They're not completely open yet, but we have been doing quite a bit of work. We have more to go, and I see some of it's going to require some money. So what I want to do now is get a management plan written up that will facilitate us acquiring grant money so we don't have to draw on other resources to do it. We are moving on that, but as far as the conservation easements that the planning board has established, which had absolutely nothing to do with the Conservation Commission or Open Space Committee, there is zero.
Right.
Zero.
I mean, I tried to make it
stewardship
clear
there.
that we've got a bunch of things going on that have
Yeah.
created not a great situation. And this is just going to be another one at the
No,
end of a
no,
cul-de-sac.
It will not be another one. This one will be handled properly. I will make sure it's handled properly. Just like we're trying to proceed properly on the other land that the Conservation Commission is directly responsible for. But we need to expand that beyond the Conservation Commission. This needs to be, we need to work together with the select board, with the planning board, with the whole town to make sure we start handling those other properties correctly as well. So I don't think this is a reason not to do this.
What would be the option for development if the town didn't take the land? Like, we have a regulation on the table that says you can do an open space development, but someone has to hold that land in the easement or own it, right? So what's the end game
It could
if we
either
don't?
be put into a homeowners association like most of them have been, or possibly they could connect that land, but they still need to have it designated as open space because it's under the regulations of an open space development. So they could keep it with each individual lot, but still have it designated open. And that's something for the town assessor to look at more closely because they have to have, in order to do that, they have to have so many acres where they're using with the home and then so many additional acres that they have as basically land that's not being used, that's being preserved. However, I think we spoke about that in the beginning when they came in, or maybe it was just with staff and TRC, and they ended up saying they would be better off just doing the regular open space, and at that point in time, they were going to have a homeowners association. The problem here is that they can't go to a conventional subdivision because they don't have enough frontage for these lots. They only comply as an open space. So there'd have to be a lot more engineering work done.
And then there's always the hard choice, eliminate open space subdivisions. Get rid of them altogether.
That's been brought
That's a-
up
that's a
too.
bigger
Well,
plan.
but are we too far down the path? Don't they have to do a yield plan to
They
show the
already
lots?
did that.
They did
They
that,
did
okay.
that.
Even with the lack of frontage, they did the yield plan.
They did.
But
But
the
it was-
yield plan and the whole process needs work because the yield plan
Yeah,
is.
yield plans are comical sometimes.
So, Tim, I would take issue with characterizing the situation as out of control, Barbara. To the contrary, you've heard both David and I say that we recognize there's a need for a better plan for providing monitoring and stewardship of these parcels, and the Conservation Commission is committed to doing that. Not that it falls up entirely on the Conservation Commission, because these are town easements, and the town has a responsibility here. The Conservation Commission doesn't hold any easements, the town does. It's the town's responsibility, and again, I think we're already taking the steps to make sure that we do a better job of inspecting, monitoring, and enforcing the terms of the various easements on these various properties. So we're moving in the right direction. It's not going to happen right away, but, you know, we've identified the need and we're committed to moving forward.
Last thing, I will just say that I went to look at the other projects that we have had over the years on this, and I know there hasn't been another open space for a while, but there have been some old ones. So I got on the town website to see where all these trails are. There aren't any trails on the town website. you have to go to trails.com or whatever, all trails or whatever. And then there are the Uncanunic ones, and then there's the Flow-Tar ones on there. So it is, I appreciate that there was a discussion, I read the minutes, but the reality is that discussion has been going on in pieces for years. So hopefully, if the Board of Selectmen is committed to this, they're going to propose some funding for it, because Conservation had one person walk this property because nobody else was available to do it. And thank you to David for doing it, but that's the reality of volunteer organizations. So I'm done.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment. I'm struggling with open space just because I don't see any direct economic benefit with open space. So that's all I want to put on record. Outside of maintenance and security and the financial burden, if there's going to be maintenance to it, but I don't see any direct economic benefit, so.
Okay.
Well, I would say that not all of our decisions have to be based on economic benefit. But David, I'm sure, is chomping at the bit to point out that every time we keep development out of future housing, then we reduce that potential to have tax burden on our schools, on our police, on our fire, because our current impact rates do not adequately buffer us against that. So I don't disagree that this land needs to be preserved. I struggle to see our processes, and I agree with everyone that it needs to be improved, but I wouldn't stand in the way of approving or supporting this. I think we just need to keep having these discussions.
And I would also say that these parcels we do derive some economic benefit from it. It draws people to Goffstown to use these open space. They recreate here. When they recreate here, they stop at our restaurants, they fill up at our gas stations, they support our merchants in town. So there is an economic benefit.
I think we're way beyond the
Yeah,
open space.
because I want to know
development.
how many
We're
people are
over
coming
the
into
threshold
town.
right now, so we're going to knock the economic development portion out of it at this point. We're going to stick with the nuts and bolts of it at this point, please. Colleen?
Yeah, I just have more of a, if we do move ahead with a recommendation tonight, I know that this is the proposed map 10, lot 10 open
Right.
space. I think that we just need to make our recommendation contingent upon that boundary of that open space lot being, subject to approval by the planning board. So that way, like David said, when we were talking about making sure the access is on the west side. And so I think any recommendation we make, we should just condition it on that, final subdivision approval.
David, you have the last word, and you got about 1 minute.
It's stated perfectly. This is completely conditional upon the subdivision being approved. The subdivision shouldn't be approved because of it. We did our review at the Conservation Commission being told that this was going to be donated to PLC, so instead of PLC, it goes to us because PLC wasn't going to take it. This is only the second time we've had one of these projects where instead of going to homeowners association, it went elsewise, and that was the first time was Blackbrook, which went to PLC, and that is a resounding success. Of all the subdivisions that have ever been done in Goffstown, creating that preserve is the most resounding success of any open space project that's ever been approved. And I want to make the second one a resounding success.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen at this point regarding the land acquisition for the town to retain ownership of the open space. Anybody want to make a motion? Or do we want to do it, or make a motion not to make any recommendation? We don't have to make a recommendation. We're not required.
I'll make a motion to recommend the acquisition, retain ownership of the open space at map 10, lot 10-OS on Tenny Road, contingent upon the final site development plan approval and the limitations that will be henceforth addressed in the future planning of that site.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
1. Abstentions? Motion passes.
Did you vote?
Okay. Very briefly, we have another one, a request for a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to demolish the structure located at 1 North Mass Road. That's that one right at the next to the old Govan store. If anybody knows what Govan store used to be.
Yeah, that's,
I don't even know what that is.
If you come down
I know
Route
that is.
13 from
Not
the
the Govan store.
popcorn, you come down Route 13 to the popcorn stand, you look straight across, there's a blue house across the street that the town bought for future I guess, for future
Planning
improvement at the intersection.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
So they want to tear the house down. Do we have a comment on tearing the house down? Yes.
No?
Yes, let's tear it down.
Oh, yes.
Make a motion to recommend the demolition permit for the structures at 1 Northwest Road.
Second?
Is that you, David?
Yes, it is.
Just
All
for
right.
board information, the contract has already been left to demolish it. The asbestos abatement's been done.
They're already-
Been turned off.
They're already working.
What I thought.
They are, in fact, the police are doing training there as we speak.
And just for purposes of correction, it's North Mass Street, it's not North Mass Road. Al Gammons would appreciate me telling you all that. Okay, so there's a motion been made and passed. It's, did we vote on it?
We have to vote.
Okay, recommendation motion to recommend by Kimberly, seconded by David, to approve to be in favor of the demolition at 1 North Mass Street. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Number 4 we'll leave on the back burner for now. Number 5, we'll enter that into the record when an email from Butters for one of our applicants. We'll enter that into the record at the appropriate time. The next one is a memo from the Corey White Sewer Commission staff. He's our TRC member regarding the recommendation for the grade for a proposed project, map 5, lot 5451 off Mass Road, which is the condo project next to the Shell station. So at this time, I'd like to invite Corey up to the table. Everyone received number 8, which is a copy of the email from the Dubay Group. It lists the additional coverage provided by the change of grades in increments. And Corey is here to speak to that on behalf of the Sewer Commission. I'd like to state that I'm the chairman of the Sewer Commission, and I will refrain from giving any comment tonight. I'll just run the meeting. David is also a member, and David has volunteered to speak to back Corey up if anybody has any questions that Corey has difficulty with or does not want to answer.
There's also an email that was left in front of you from the Dubay Group concerning the grade.
Yeah, that's number 8, I told it anyway.
Okay. Well, I mean, it concerns this project.
Right, that's why I brought it up.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, I'll turn the floor over to Corey White, Sewer Department.
So the driveway entrance at 134 Mass Road right now is designed at 8%, which only leaves 0.91 feet of cover over the sewer interceptor that runs down the rail trail. That's a 30-inch plastic pipe that empties all of the wastewater in the center of town and sends it to Manchester. Allowing for a 10% grade on that driveway would increase the cover over the top of that pipe and protect it, which is very important because in wastewater there's no off. If something happens to that pipe and it breaks, that backs up all the way to the center of town, major issues. So we're looking to get as much cover and protection for that infrastructure as we can. And to add on top of it, it's not a normal pipe. I've researched it. It's a 30-inch pipe, but it's ribbed, which is odd for sewer. It's usually smooth on the outside. This one is ribbed, and you can't get it. So if anything happens to it, you're replacing it with either a bigger pipe, because they don't even make that size anymore, and it only comes from Canada. So we really just want to be very careful with it, and the more cover we have, the more protection we have, and less worries that anything's going to happen to it.
Does anybody have questions for Corey at this time? Joanne, let's explain to this. We are not going to vote on this tonight. If
That's
not-
correct. This is not a public hearing for this application. Corey is only here to explain what the Sewer Commission is looking for. And we're trying to give direction to the engineer because he's in the process of designing this project. So we were just going to see if we could get some sort of a consensus as to whether or not the board would agree with the 10%. And then we'll relay that over to the engineer so he can continue with his design. He will need a waiver for this when he does come back for his public hearing.
A waiver from what?
For the driveway grade. because it's not supposed to be.
It was determined that this is a road by this,
Yes.
by this
Right, so what is the maximum grade allowed? That was my
8%
question.
per
road.
So the waiver is because under a possible proposal, it would be greater than allowed by the regs, which is 8%. That's what I wanted on the record.
And the memo that was provided shows the differentials if you split it in 6-inch increments.
Right.
So if there's compromise in there, that's what the, what was being shown to everyone to see.
Corey?
I'd like to add one more bit of technical information on the various percentages in our handout. Corey mentioned that there's 9/10 of a foot, and that's from the top of the asphalt. You subtract off 3 inches for asphalt. You
Four.
4. You subtract off about 6
7,
or 7 inches for a concrete slab that would hopefully reduce the impact of vehicle traffic. You are only left with 2 inches between the bottom of this concrete slab and the top of the
The
pipe.
interceptor.
The SOAR Commission has technically approved that arrangement. The Corey is asking for more mitigation on that 2 inches of risk. The SOAR Commission would like more mitigation of the risk. Therefore, 10 would be highly preferred. 10%.
Can I ask you a question?
Scott?
When we previously saw this, were these covered numbers the same? I feel like the 8% wasn't that shallow.
Well, that changed.
It did change? Okay.
Yeah, we had talked about it at the SOAR Commission meeting when they had come in, where we found the discrepancy from the original numbers to the
Okay.
numbers that they provided
Mhm.
at the last meeting,
All right.
which being less than what was first presented.
Okay.
It went from,
It was over
it
a
was
foot,
one, it was
right?
1.38
Okay.
in the beginning. And then you deduct the 4 and 7, which is 11, from 1.38, and you're left with about 5 inches of cover. There was a 3-inch disparity
Yeah.
after the grades were actually checked and shot on
Okay.
site.
I think I was going to ask the same question. Colleen had brought up the last time that she felt that it wasn't safe because, you know, in the wintertime, cars may slide into the road. Does this provide an area that's flat at the end of this driveway? And if so, what is that percentage?
It's essentially flat for
2% for ADA crossing.
It's
Yeah,
2%
they need
away
that
from
There,
the road.
there's
and
maybe
then-
3 feet of road
Yeah.
shoulder, then you have 10 feet of the rail trail, which is essentially flat.
Yeah.
'Cause I think the regulation needed
So-
like 2% for like 100 feet or something, so.
For
if
an
we
inter,
need-
yeah, for an
Okay.
roadway intersection is what the regs
Okay.
call for, so.
Um,
But I believe at the prior meeting, we conceded
We're
to
okay
not
on
force
the-
that issue
Yeah.
on this application.
Can I just ask Corey, what's the standard cover that we require over a sewer pipe? Is it normally 36 inches?
4 feet.
Okay, so we normally have 4 feet, so do they need a waiver? I guess, are we giving 2 waivers then? I don't like the steeper driveway going in, but I'm also, if we raise it even more than 10%, can they get more cover so that they're closer with standard? They're not gonna meet the standard sewer cover.
Mr. Chair? Even at 10%, they'll still have a concrete slab.
Okay.
It's the cushion between the bottom of the slab and the top of the pipe that the commission is considering.
Yeah.
Would we request that during construction, they actually make it even a little steeper for the heavy equipment going over it?
I thought that was discussed.
That was discussed, yes.
It was,
They-
okay.
They'd have to add fill to it to get any sort of heavy equipment and trucks in and out.
Yeah.
At our meeting, we requested that they add material as well as possibly steel plate it during construction.
Okay.
And they said they would build the driveway at the very end of the process with the slab so that all the construction traffic would not pound that slab and break it during construction. It would be strictly for the finished product.
And that, you probably don't know the answer to this, but in your research, did you find a recommended cover for this specific pipe material?
A minimum of 1 foot,
Okay.
but
Which is
that's-
similar to ADS.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Chair, we're looking for a consensus of opinion tonight, right? So when the applicant comes back to the planning board and he presents a driveway slope of 10%, we will be inclined to be favorable towards that.
That is a consensus that's to be decided by the planning board members.
Yeah. There's no vote, but it's a consensus of,
It's, as Joanne described, it's direction for the engineer to finish the design.
Well, I'd rather have the cover on the interceptor than deal with the percentage grade, and I'm not happy about the grade, but, you know, frankly, I think they should have to build it up on the other side, but whatever. I'd rather have the depth over the interceptor.
And part of the discussion came down to the fact that the rail trail could not cross the driveway at an 8% or a 10% slope because the maximum ADA requirement is 2.5%. And so the rail trail driveway was relocated to the toe of the slope by Route 114 to accommodate the crossing grade. And that's kind of what also is pushing this whole driveway into the project
Into the
and closer
project.
to the sewer main simultaneously.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of engineering factors involved in there to accommodate all parties.
Which is why I think when this plan was originally thought of, there was a different access.
Yes.
Well, what does this board want? Does this board want the access on 114, or does this board want the access through the medical building? Because that's the only 2 points of access for this site. So this is a decision for the board to make.
Well, I do think the board previously indicated they thought the 114 access was better. I don't know whether anybody else has that memory, but, because I make up my own at this age, but I'm pretty sure that was one of them that actually occurred here.
I believe you're correct, Bob.
I would be favorable for the same reason, Barbara. I dislike the idea of the 30 residents going through the parking lot of a medical building to access their facility.
So if we can move this along, if anybody has any other questions for Corey, and I'd like to run a consensus, a yay or nay to consider a steeper grade than the 8%. Any other questions for Corey or David from board members?
When you say a steeper grade, you're looking at 10%.
10%.
Up to 10%.
Just
The board
double
could
check.
decide on 9. We'd like to see 10, the commission would like to see 10, but it's the board's decision. And the commission will work with the board on their decision.
I'll move the issue along. I propose a consensus of our opinion to a 10% grade.
Okay, we have one.
Open.
Colleen, your consensus?
Yeah, I mean, begrudgingly, I'd rather see the sewer department happy. But I also would prefer to see a site that had, you know, a roadway and access that met all the regulations, but knowing that's not gonna happen, I'd go with the recommendation of the sewer commission.
Thank you. Barbara?
10%.
Brian?
I concur, yep.
I go with the
Emily?
10%.
I'm not voting.
None of us are voting. This is a
Safety, that's
Yeah,
the one that
exactly.
is an issue of public health and safety, absolutely.
Okay. So Corey, you can take it back to the engineering staff for the developer that the planning board concurs that they're willing to work with them at a 10% grade, and that it helps protect the sewer main better.
All right, we'll work on that.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Excuse me. And we'll take number 7 at the end of the meeting. Okay, so let's go to our first application. It's old business. 2-lot subdivision, Field Street. Joanne.
So the applicant has been before you at a previous meeting. He is looking to do a 2-lot subdivision on Ivy Street, and there would be the existing house on one lot and a proposed new single-family dwelling on the second lot. He has gone through staff review, and we have received one additional letter from one of the abutters The applicant does have a copy of that.
Could you please read their name into the record?
The Hux, let me just get it here.
It's in our packet.
Huxels?
Carol Hux.
Carolyn Kirk, Huxell,
Yes.
abutters.
And they, where did they say they live? They live at 68 Field Street.
That's lot 68.
Yeah, no, they're-
That's not their physical address.
Oh, okay.
Which is across the street.
Oh, lot 68,
They
sorry.
live here
And they're stating their concerns.
without this one.
Yes,
Warrant
and
on.
the, like I said, the applicant does have a copy of that letter. They did provide us earlier in the week with revised plans, however, there wasn't time for us to review or to get them to the board for this meeting, so,
So what are we looking at if we're not looking at the revised plans?
so we're looking at the plans that they submitted previously.
Well, I don't want to look at them.
Well, I
They
think that
responded, so the plans that were submitted for this meeting, they responded to our comments on them already.
So they've already responded once, but now they've updated this. So what we were going to, once the
We just got it
developer presents the plan, they'll explain to you what's been updated, and
I-
those items could possibly be conditions of approval.
I don't like that. We can't see it. The plan should be in our hand for the night of the meeting. That's one of our rules that's cut in stone. We don't accept plans the night before a meeting, expect the planning board to look at a plan. That's always been the case. I don't know why we're moving in that direction tonight.
Mr. Chair, Joanne, the changes on this recent submittal, aren't they in reaction to Public Works comments?
Yes.
So that is standard procedure. We have a list of 5, 6, 7 Public Works comments, and the engineers always say, yes, we concur with what Public Works wants, and when we present a final Mylar copy, they'll have those changes
That's
on it.
correct. That's why I was saying that these items could be conditions of approval. They're not
That-
items that the
So
board would
that's-
have to
and
reach
that
out.
has been a standard procedure.
Correct.
They were just
Thank
a
you.
little more proactive. Instead of coming to just answer our questions, they attempted to handle responding.
All right, well, if the board feels it's okay.
So we have the
I'm
revised
opposed.
plans tonight?
No.
No,
Because they haven't been reviewed, so that we haven't been able to.
So,
Oh, I have trouble
so
with
for
that.
example,
I'm on the 10 side. How do we
The
know what
deep-
we're looking at?
yeah, okay, but is this the point, if you go to page 6 of our packet, there are DPW engineering comments. Add a note, display the existing drainage, show sewer service to house, add call out for the spillway, show limits of the riprap. I think what David's point was, when we normally do an approval, we would include those on the conditions of approval, which in fact are on the suggested conditions for approval on page 7. So what you're saying is that you've already received an updated plan
Correct.
that supposedly addresses your comments, you just haven't.
Exactly.
So if you hadn't even mentioned that we had another
Yeah.
plan, we would not be doing anything differently.
yes,
Okay, so why don't we pretend we don't have?
Pretend we don't.
just pretend we don't have
Yeah.
it.
So then our conditions of approval tonight are going to include everything that we would say tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you would have to, they still have to address them whether they've been addressed or not, because you haven't reviewed them.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I read their letter and that was all I had to
So
say.
the applicant needs to be fully aware of that. But the plan, if we approve this tonight, it is not with the plans that have just been submitted. They need to be reviewed. Right.
And there's a mention of an emergency spillway. Is that emergency spillway shown on any of the plans we have in this packet?
Yes,
It is shown, it's just not labeled.
Where? Page 3 or 4?
page 3 of 4.
Yeah.
You will see in the
You can
lower
s-
left, lower right corner.
Let's let the engineer speak to this, please, David.
Yeah, so it's, you can see the contours are kind of squared off there to create an opening.
Yeah?
And that is where the spillway is. And the existing drainage actually all funnels towards that lower corner, and that's where their outlet for the overflow outlet is. And they meet pre and post for, in the packet that I first got, they meet it for the 25 and 50. I didn't have the 100-year storm at the time, but they've since provided it. So
And the emergency spillway, does that have to be constructed out of anything? I know there's a weir included.
There's a detail that it's a weir detail.
Yeah,
It's a
but I mean,
stone.
when it spills over the top, what prevents it from eroding the slopes?
It's all riprap.
It's all riprap, and
Yeah.
that's not shown on our plan.
It's on the detail.
It's on the detail.
Yeah, so that's sheet 404. the
Sheet
way-
404.
It's class
All right,
B.
emergency
Class B
spillway,
riprap.
I got it. No, it seems like they're incomplete to me, that's all. All right, so
They are
anything else from
sparse.
staff, Barbara?
The email from the abutter in regards to concerns about water retention, that was dated May 14th. Has that been considered in connection with review of this as to whether it applies or not?
She's across the street.
Yeah,
The contours on her property, barely any water is directed to her currently from the lot.
okay,
And no additional is being directed off the lot anywhere, so
okay.
I don't believe anything that's happening on this site would.
Will affect across the
would-
street.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry that this is my mistake, but, so, don't we typically show like a 4K square? And we've got,
They have municipal.
that's what I was checking. So that, because they have municipal water and sewer, they can just show that the house meets all the requirements?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Do you have any engineering comments that have to be addressed? Are you good to go right now, Scott?
I'm good to go. The stuff that I had was pretty minor.
Joanne, do you have anything else from staff?
No, I don't.
Okay, so at this point, we'll ask the applicant to come on up with their representative and sit down.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Eric Force here. I'm joined by my engineer, Jordan Young, but I'll go first. So, we came here originally not too long ago and received a bunch of feedback at the last planning board meeting. We addressed all that feedback. We submitted new plans on time to be here on time, but addressing everything. And so now we're hoping for conditional approval to address just a few minor items that we think are left that we've already submitted because we're so excited to get it done. But it shouldn't be in front of you. And I think, with my limited knowledge of how this works, it should be conditionally approved so we can get this over with. As to the Huxells, 9 Ivy Street, as soon as I got that email, I went right down there. I tried to address their concerns. I invited them to a meeting. We had a meeting with Jordan, my engineer. We also are joined by Tim Pelican, my surveyor. I actually worked around the Huxell schedule to pick a day and time that worked for them, and they no-showed me and never followed up, so I tried as much as I could to address their concerns, but they did not show up, so I don't think we need to be worried anymore about their email. I tried to address their concerns. I think Jordan's going to tell you there's no impact whatsoever, like you already heard, so I think that's a moot point. But other than that, I think we've addressed everything. We only have a few minor things that we're ready to submit very soon. So I'm hoping for a conditional approval today. I can talk about each and every comment and what we've done, but I think they speak for themselves, and certainly the surveyor and the engineer can do a better job than I can.
Thank you, sir. You going to speak, Mr. Jordan?
Yeah.
Jordan,
First, I want
Mr.
to
Young?
apologize. I thought I was trying to be proactive by showing that we do address all the comments, but obviously it just caused confusion. I apologize. So there was a couple comments, pretty administrative. One of them being to raise the dam by 6 inches to get the required 1 foot of freeboard during the 50-year storm event, which we have done and will be sent to you if we have a conditional approval tonight, as well as just labeling that this is riprap. It is shown on the detail, but I just added it to the plan. I believe that's it, because I did speak to Scott this afternoon and went over everything. As for 9 Ivy Street, they're upstream of us. Everything that leaves this site goes to the south, they're to the north. They won't be impacted.
Yeah, I'm just reading the drainage report comments on page 6. Go ahead.
So, Tim, it looks like we still have waivers requested. Oh, okay, amended to only include number 1. So 2, 3, and 4 are no longer being requested, correct, Joanne?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So Scott, I'm reading in our report on page 6 about the Appendix C, Section T, 5T.4, designed for a 50 and 100-year storm. It doesn't appear that a 100-year storm analyzation was provided, is that a fact?
In the original copy, that is correct. It was not included.
Has it been done?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
I took a quick look. I'm not saying it's perfect yet, but I did look, and the report I received does have that info.
Okay.
So is
Questions for the
My
for the
bad.
staff or for the applicants from board members?
there-
Go ahead.
So why don't we have approved turnaround table for a fire truck? And is
Well-
fire okay with that?
Well, we've already talked about that on other applications where the driveways are only
So short.
20 feet long or 30
Okay.
feet long. You can't turn a fire truck around in a 30-foot driveway anyway, so.
All right, I'm just asking.
We've dealt with this on other applicants before. So that was, we're not worrying about that. Right? Joanne, are there any waivers that are outstanding? Is there one still outstanding?
So you have not voted on that waiver, so.
Which one?
Number
The one
one.
for the fire
turnaround
truck.
for a
We
fire
talked
truck.
about
That's
it,
what I wanted to.
So all the other ones have been dealt with?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about the waiver right now, so we can dispatch it. Oh, we have to have a public hearing before we can discuss that. We'll get back to that. Any other,
Mr. Chair, can I
Colleen,
just,
please.
so I know the rain garden has some specifications here in the detail sheet just for annual inspections, whatnot. And I guess this is more for the board, but would we typically put a condition, because we're putting that on the homeowner, the future property owner, expecting that they're going to be doing some sort of maintenance of that? I mean, I know that this plan set in whole constitutes the subdivision as approved, but should there be a note on the sheet being recorded or something just that, you know, points to the fact that there are some BMPs that need to be maintained for the rain garden so that, you know, if it's built per plan right now, but, you know, 5 years from now, it hasn't been maintained, now we have a downstream problem for the abutter. I don't know what this board has typically done for maintenance and inspection requirements.
Scott, do you have an answer for that question by any chance?
It's not really followed up on currently. We're trying to actually come up with some type of implementation for it, but engineering's a two-person show right now.
Yeah,
and-
well, I mean, I think, and obviously, we don't have the staff to do it, but
Yeah.
if we at least have a note on that, I know nobody looks at plans, no one reads their deeds
Yeah.
anyways, but if there's at least a note on that recorded sheet that just references that, you know, that the stormwater controls should be maintained in accordance with, you know, sheet 4 of 4, I don't know if that at least puts a little something on so that in the future, if we need to come back and we have a problem, we can say, hey, look, you gotta go out there and muck out your, you know,
Yeah.
debris that's accumulating.
Isn't that note usually always on the plans filed with the county registry?
I don't know
of
if
deeds?
it's always on the recorded sheet, because we, for
Yeah.
the subdivisions, we only recorded the one sheet,
Right.
and then we don't record site plans with the
Yeah.
registry of deeds, so
The only
they
thing we've
stay
ever-
on file here at Town Hall and the DPW.
But how does the homeowner, who, you
Yeah.
know, builds this,
I
buys
mean,
this
there- like three
property,
homeowners
they build
away
a
will
house,
never
how
know
does the
about
future
this, yeah.
homeowner know of the obligation to maintain the rain garden?
I don't know.
This is why they're problematic.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment?
No.
Real quick? Okay.
Sit down. If you want to, are you with this
He's
applicant?
their surveyor.
Okay, well then please come up and identify yourself. I just didn't know if you're some random homeowner.
I do know Colleen.
For the record, your name, sir.
Tim Peliquin, I'm a
Thank you,
licensed
Tim.
land surveyor from the land survey, and Colleen makes a really good point, and I thought it would come up, that there might need to be an easement or some sort, but an easement doesn't really work. But I would be glad, upon any condition of approval, to make a careful notation that the engineer would agree to, your town engineer would agree to put a maintenance agreement of fact on the plan. And while people might not see that or whatever, title companies do see these things, so it does have some impact. So I'd be glad to word something that would be satisfactory to your engineer. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have to
We
protect
typically
the,
do ask for that, and we didn't on this one.
we also have to protect the fact that it will remain in the backyard forever. Because homeowners have a bad habit of seeing that big hole in the backyard and they don't like it and they fill it in and make a lawn out of it. And now we don't have the drainage doesn't work anymore, which is an integral part of the approval of this site. Without the drainage, the site probably doesn't get approved. So however that has to remain in perpetuity, that's what we have to come up with some way to
Yeah.
figure it out.
The drainage maintenance agreement would work for this one. It would say they need to maintain that in perpetuity of the
And
development
file
site.
reports with DPW on some schedule, as other
Yeah.
drainage maintenance agreements require.
Okay.
So, now that we figured that out, they're still gonna fill it in 10 years. 'Cause we won't, nobody goes out and watches these things.
But at least when the downstream abutter has an issue,
Yep.
you know, we've got something.
I don't know what we have at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
they have-
I have not rewriting anything. right?
No,
It
yeah,
gives
I have
us something
plenty.
to enforce it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Public hearing?
I think so. Anybody else have any questions for the surveyor, the applicant, or the engineer?
Are you through with what you need to present? For now?
Yes.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to open up a public hearing. If anybody likes to be heard on this matter regarding this application, now's your time to come up to the microphone and have your, say, 7 minutes. And I don't see anybody getting up for the public hearing, so we'll close the public hearing. Any other, we have to act on the waiver now that we've talked about that. So Appendix A, Section 8, the, provide an approved suitable fire truck turning area. We've dealt with this on other applications, would have these short neighborhood driveways, and we've waived them routinely in the past, so I really don't know that there's, unless someone has a problem with it, it seems to be a cut and dry.
Did they have to submit that list of answers to the questions? Do we have to go over that?
No, this is just a waiver.
Did that get included?
That's the conditional use.
Well, those are
permit.
conditional use.
Oh, thank
permits.
you. Okay. I make a motion to approve the turnaround suitable for fire truck waiver, the waiver of Appendix A, Section 8C, 11B, and C for the approved turnaround suitable for the fire truck. Sorry, Gail.
I'll second it.
So that's Kimberly and Ryan.
Our secretary's in here tonight.
Okay, any discussion on the motion to approve the waiver that will eliminate the need for an approved fire truck center? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So that waiver's handled.
Good.
And this will be serviced by sewer, right?
Yes.
So I don't see anything in the note on here about the sewer. Is it in here that I didn't see? You have to pay the accessibility fee?
Yes,
Number
it's on
13
this.
here.
Is that on page 13?
13 and 14.
Okay, good, just want to make sure it was out there. Because I was reading the planning department comments about impact fees.
The applicant's aware that the fence needs to be repaired, replaced.
Scheduled for early August. Or mid-August.
The only question I have for you is, the water that comes out of the corner of your lot goes to your neighbor, Mrs. Como, from what if I, is that her name, Mrs. Como?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah?
the plans have the owner to the right as Sienna Como.
That's what I'm reading.
Her name is Sienna Hall, Hall, who happens to live at 191 Como Street.
Oh, so that's just a misprint. You'll have to
Oh.
correct, you have to correct those on your plans when you get around to submitting plans. 3 of 4 shows your map and lot number with the wrong name on it.
All of them need to be corrected.
The whole plan set. Anywhere where the person is incorrectly identified as Mrs.
Just
Como,
right
it's when it's Mrs. Hall. Okay?
Just the last name.
So my question for you is, you have all this drainage that has outfalls and waterfalls and flows. Now, this does not exceed the pre and post drainage report?
Just know there's
to your
a
standards?
slight reduction in.
Slight reduction.
In site runoff, yeah.
Now, when you include the storm surges from big storms, does that include it in your drainage report as normal
So-
runoff from those events?
They went up to the 50 in the original one, they went up to the 100 in the most recent one that I received, and there was still a reduction. Storm surges, I don't quite know what you mean. I mean,
Well, I mean, when
the
you have
100-year storm around here is like 6 inches in 24 hours, so
Right.
that's pretty intense.
Right.
So that's what our regs require.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't know.
Just want to make sure that's been discussed and covered, because that's a
Okay.
big element of
Yep.
any approval tonight, that they meet the requirements for the,
Yeah, and looking at these conditions, I realize I missed one. Typically, when we have these private drainage ponds, we want an inspection by either the town or one of our consultants to make sure that the drainage structure is constructed correctly, so I think we should add that, and I apologize for missing that in my original
and the
comments.
expense for that is to be borne by the applicant?
Correct, yep.
Go ahead.
That's condition 21.
Is it
Condition
That would
20?
actually be 23. 21 is
drainage maintenance agreement?
the maintenance agreement,
What's 22?
and then 22 is correcting the abutter's name.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, good, you got them all on there. Thank you, Joanne. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do want to make sure, the town, make sure whoever builds on there adheres to this plan as to drainage. I know that neighbor very well, I've known her since I was in diapers, and I don't want any more water going to her lot. So I would appreciate an addition to make sure the town, whoever I sell this to, builds in such a way that adheres to this plan, because the last thing I want is any more water to June, who lives in that.
Are you going to live next door this whole time?
Undecided.
Okay, because you'd be a good ambassador to go over there and make sure it gets done right.
I hear you, and I'm gonna make sure it's done right,
Okay.
to the extent I can. If somebody else buys it and does something ridiculous, I'll be fighting June's fight, but it won't be my responsibility.
Mr. Chair? David, please?
On our plans where you see the outfall going to the southeast corner of the property, 1 foot away on June Hall's where June Hall lives there, her daughter Sienna Hall owns the land.
Understood.
In the rear corner of their property is a 20-foot by 20-foot dry well filled with 3-inch stones. And I asked the resident who lives on that property, has she ever seen the dry well overflow in any storm, that the water would then continue through her backyard? And she says, she indicated that she hadn't. It wasn't totally clear, but she indicated that dry well hadn't overflowed. So I'm, Scott's presentation said that the flow is not going to exceed what the present flow is. Therefore, I'm comfortable that the dry well on the Hall's property is going to properly accommodate the flow.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you, Tim. So
Follow.
on page 5, we've had quite a conversation about water quantity. On page 5, the bottom, Conservation Commission also brought up the issue of water quality, and is it being properly treated, is that?
Yeah,
is that
so
right?
it's a bioretention pond /
Okay.
rain garden, so
And it's
it's
provided.
filtration there.
Okay.
Thank you, Carlos. Anybody else?
And the groundwater wasn't as bad as we were anticipating either.
Oh,
I forget the elevation, but it wasn't too bad.
42 inches deep.
42.
Yep.
so the infiltration happened.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You ready for a motion?
That was the seasonal high water table,
Mhm.
42?
Mhm.
Anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, we're looking for, Kimberly would like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, a condition, approve this subdivision,
Conditionally approved? or-
conditionally approve this subdivision with conditions 1 through 23 as noted here tonight.
And the additional ones brought in by the town engineer? Because he has some other
Well,
ones.
that's
that
in 21, 22, and 23.
They're all included.
Yep.
We don't have to add any.
Well, no, those are the ones that she
So we have
included
1 through 20
20.
here in our notes, and then we also have the additional 3 that Joanne just introduced.
Thank you for that. I'm sure they're all included.
Yep.
Okay, so the motion to conditionally approve the project with the conditions Noted. Anybody have any discussion on, do I have a second yet?
Second.
Anybody have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all approve, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. You have a conditional approval tonight.
Thank you.
Our next application is a new business application. More transmission structures on the B143 line, Eversource Energy. Joanne?
So Eversource is back to do some additional replacement poles. They will be replacing the B143 transmission line. There are a total of 5 structures. They need a conditional use permit, and the project actually begins at Mast.
Continue.
Is anybody listening? At Mast Road and 114, proceeding through Goffstown and then through the towns of Bedford and Merrimack. The existing wooden poles will be replaced with weathered steel, as you can see throughout town. That's what's happening with them now. And the heights will be 10 feet plus compared to the heights of the current poles. There'll be a temporary wetland impact of 18,490 square feet. They will be using timber matting within the wetlands during the work, and there are no vernal pools that have been identified on site.
Thank you, Joanne. Questions for staff? Scott, do you have anything to add? Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should say there is no regional impact in the plan. The application is complete.
Barbara, would you like to make the motion, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the application for conditional use permit as complete with no regional impact.
Ready to review?
Yeah.
And are there any waivers requested?
There are no waivers
All right,
requested.
so Barbara's motion stands. Did you second it, Kimberly?
I did.
Motion to find this application is complete, ready to review with no regional impact. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So we can begin.
If I could just say one additional thing before we start. They did provide us with an entire booklet for the conditional use permit. However, they added additional information on the functions and values report. So if you're looking at that report, please look at the one that's separate from the bound book first, because that's the older one.
Any more questions for staff? Okay, well, I have you guys speak up, please.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Scott Egan. I'm a wetland wildlife ecologist with AECOM out of Manchester, New Hampshire. Here with Jeremy Fennell from Eversource. The B143 project, it begins up at Mast Road here in Goffstown. It extends about 13.3 miles down to the Reedsbury substation in Merrimack, so it goes all the way through Bedford into Merrimack. There's about 33 structures that are going to be replaced as part of this project. There are old wooden structures that are, showing their signs of their age and they're no longer structurally sound, so they're going to replace them with the weathering steel structures. The portion that is in Goffstown begins, like I said, it begins up here near Mast Road. And there's this small section here. So the other part of the project is pulling of a new ground wire, optical ground wire. So these pads here up at Mast Road are on existing gravel. There's existing gravel pads from the other work that was done there on the other line. And
Before you go any further, could you just explain where that site is? Is that the new site where you're doing all your site work for the new?
No, across the street.
Where is that site?
So
On Mast
that's,
Road?
It's the ball fields.
It's
yeah,
it's
the
the
ball field,
entrance,
Where they've been
Mast
working is
Road,
next to
the
the
entrance to the ball
substation.
field parking.
Yes, it's across the street from the new
from where they're working.
Well,
New
that's what I just
pole
asked.
area.
Yes.
Where the new substation is supposed to be built.
Yes,
Across the street.
Right, it's across
Put your
the
finger on
street.
the first box. That box right there is the entrance to the ball field parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Excuse me, if I have a laser beam, if you sit down, then perhaps the audience could see better.
Let
Hopefully
me
that will
start
work
over. Is anybody
for us.
here from the audience that really wants to see this? We'll have them turn the map if someone wants to see it. Doesn't look like anybody really wants the map.
Oh, well.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Pretty brief. So those 3 pads up there off of Mass Road are strictly just for pulling the optical ground wire. There's no wetlands up there, and there's no other activities going on, and there's existing access and existing pads that will be used. The other portion of the project, which begins down, it starts at the Goffstown line with Bedford, which is
The
the
little
green button.
near, right under the screen, the button under the screen.
Okay, so that's the Goffstown Bedford Town line. That's about 0.7 miles north of New Boston Road. So all of the access is going to be coming along the existing right-of-way from New Boston Road. There's pretty much existing access roads for that whole section except for where it has to cross a few wetlands. Once you get to the town line here, this is about a 0.4 mile section here with these 5 structures that are all going to be replaced. The project is going to require crossing of this one wetland right here, wetland 30, and then there's a wetland number 28 right here, which is right next to structure 41. They are, the wetlands are, all the work is within the existing right-of-way. The wetlands are basically maintained as shrub, open wet meadow type habitats. The access road here, there's like an existing road kind of through that wetland that's historic, that's been there for a long time, but they will be using timber mat pads to cross it, and same with timber mat pads around to work around the structure here and replace them. We have completed all of our consultation with New Hampshire Fish and Game on this as well. We have some recommendations from them that are part of the final plan set that will be part of the project. And that's pretty much about it. It's a pretty straightforward project. It's only 2 wetlands being impacted temporarily with the timber mats while they get in there and get the work done.
When do you expect to start if you get your approval?
September is the planned start date. We have a condition with Fish and Game to try to get mats in wetlands before October 15th to avoid any impacts to turtle overwintering habitat. So we need to get started as soon as possible, as soon as we can.
Thank you. Jeremy, you have anything to add?
No, this is, pretty straightforward, the same type of project that we've been doing for the last 6 or 7 years. And, as you can see, we're utilizing roads that we've used on other projects, so there is some use for that long term, because we have a lot of lines in this town.
Board members, questions for the applicants?
I have a question for John.
Please.
So it looks like they've addressed 13.3.6 and 13.3.7, but do we have a conditional use permit application where they've answered 15.4.1? Don't we usually read those in?
We do read them into the record.
I'm pretty sure it's in this.
We sometimes waive the readings, but have them answered.
Right, as long as they're answered, but they're not in the packet.
In the standard form that we normally get from them, and I didn't see it.
Yes, it's on page 5 of the booklet. It starts with 13.3.6.
Well, those are the 13s, we don't have the 15s answered. I feel like we go over this every time and it confuses me, but we have to address the conditional use permit conditions from 15 point blah, 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 where are they? No, 15.4.1, that's what it says on page 10 in our packet.
We've had this discussion, and I think it's talking Mandy for a little.
I know, I feel like we go round and round. The CUP criteria and answers can be found on page 5 of the conditional use permit application. which, you know, they've answered 13.3 point blah, blah, blah. But the following procedures and requirements shall apply to the consideration of conditional use permits. So I guess if we ask them verbally, I don't have a huge heartache about you not doing this, as long as we can go over them, you can give us answers, and then we'll enter it into the record that way.
Kimberly, why don't you proceed with that for us?
Sure, sorry, just jumped right in there. So, and let me just clear it up for anybody who's just following along for fun. So a conditional use permit is requested from section 13.3.7.1 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance, and they have addressed why they don't want to, why they do not meet that zoning ordinance. And so we have to, following procedures and requirements or conditional use permit consideration. So 15.4.1.4.1, the use is specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use.
Affirmative or negative answer?
It is in fact, yes.
Yes.
Yes, and you answered that on page 5 of your document. So 15.4.1.4.2, if completed as proposed by the applicant, the development and its location will comply with all requirements of the section, specific conditions or standards established in the ordinance for this particular use.
Yes.
You've answered that, and I think you've answered that in the application, just not specifically to that number. 15.4.1.4.3, the use will be compatible with the neighborhood, adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it is located.
Yes.
Yep. 15.4.1.4.4, the use will not have substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety.
Yes.
15.4.1.4.5, the use will not have substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood.
Yes.
15.4.1.4.6, the use will be adequately serviced by necessary public utilities and by community facilities and services of sufficient capacity to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use.
Yes.
You are the public utility.
There we go, we got that, all right. We just had to officially cover that, thank
But
you.
before we go any farther, let's go back to the adverse impact on the visual and appearance. It states, your application states you'll be 10 plus or minus taller with the poles, is that correct? 10 feet plus or minus taller?
Yes, within 10 feet, I think is the way. It's
Not
worded, it's worded plus or minus 10 feet of the existing structure
Well,
height.
what is plus, 1 foot or 9 feet?
It could be up to 10 feet.
So an additional
Taller.
10 on top of 10?
No.
I'm trying to get
That's
the...
probably not worded
Plus-
very well.
Plus 10.
It says 10 plus or minus feet,
Higher than the existing.
Higher than.
Yes.
higher than the existing. So when you say 10 plus or minus, what is the plus range for the additional beyond 10?
Between 1 foot
And 10
addition
feet.
and 10 feet. It's a range.
So it could, theoretically, it could be, now you're
No,
confused.
Tim
No more than
is
10 feet
right.
higher, 10
Tim
feet.
is
Up to
right as
10
to the
feet,
way
right?
it's phrased, but what the intent is, it will not be more
It'll
than
be
10
no more
feet
than
higher
10
than the
feet
current
in
pole.
existing structure.
But that's not plus or minus 10.
That's not how you, that's not how it's stated in your paperwork.
Up to
The
10
new
feet.
structures will be no more than 10 feet higher than.
Does it say within plus or minus 10 feet? I can't remember. It says,
Forget about it.
Do you agree with that statement? The structures will be not more than 10 feet.
Higher than the
That's the
existing.
plan, yes. Yeah.
It's in the record.
Because that's part of the visual appearance as a conditional use permit.
Tim's gonna get out there with this
No, I'm
tape
not.
measure.
It's laser,
No,
yeah.
I'm not gonna do any of the sort. I'm just trying
To
to
get
make
it
sure
on that
it's clear
hill
for the
coming out of the
record.
ball field, you need a laser.
Yeah.
All right,
All right.
so are we satisfied?
In our process, I looked over the functions and values assessment, I agreed that they addressed everything that is required, and that their comments seem to be consistent with what's out there, and what, no, I don't have any issues with that, unless anybody else has any issues over that.
No new driveway permits, Scott?
No.
Existing permits that they have in place?
No, since they access through, they're accessing through Bedford and they're accessing through the ball fields driveway. It's
Yeah,
an
but don't they
existing-
cross Shirley Hill at some point?
No, they're not going all the way.
No, because they're going,
That first plan, they just had 2 or 3 pads, they're not going far up the hill.
No, but the second part of it, it looked like it started at Shirley Hill and extended to the Bedford line.
They're coming from Bedford though.
Oh, they're coming from Bedford.
Yeah.
right, that's the new Boston Road access.
Yeah.
That's the new Boston Road access, because there is a road from the Shirley Hill side, all the way in there.
Yeah, but there's, is
Maybe
that a
it
big
doesn't go that
wetland over
far.
there?
That's too big across the wetland.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
Oh, because that's the big
it's all
tract of
coming
wetlands
from
right there?
New Boston Road.
Okay, thank you for that, making sure it's clear. Yeah, we'll do that. Probably a moot point, but we'll do it anyway. Okay, before we vote on anything at this point, we are going to open a public hearing, so you guys can stay seated in case no one's here. Okay, at this point, we're going to open a public hearing on this application. Anybody who wishes to speak, now's the time. Seeing no one getting up, I will say we'll close the public hearing. Board members.
Let's see, what are they asking? They're asking for a conditional use permit, correct, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion to recommend approval of the request for a conditional use permit on the conditions noted 1 through 7 on page 13 of our packets. I don't think we added anything else to that, right? And with the acknowledgement that the applicant addressed the conditional use permit requirements both verbally tonight and in the packet provided.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Kimberly, seconded by Collis to grant the conditional use permit for this project as needed. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Permits have been granted. Thank you, folks.
I just have one comment. I know by the time Eversource or whoever goes through this again, none of us will be here because this doesn't happen very often. But the next time it does, you guys always do really great work. You ought to come into town so we adopt an ordinance in our zoning ordinance to specifically address the requests that you're going to have to come in, because you guys do a terrific job on your applications. And that you do it frequently. So I sort of feel at this point we should have a special application process for these things. So.
That could be viewed as being impartial.
Well, I don't know.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next application.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne, our next application is new. It's map 3, lot 41, St. A's.
Yes, we have St. A's College
I know.
here tonight, or representatives from the college. They are here for completeness review. They also need a conditional use permit, and they are doing a site plan for a proposal to demolish an existing two-story building that is currently being used for admin offices, a computer lab, and classrooms. This building was built in 1983. And they were replacing it with a brand-new three-story building consisting of 44,800 square feet for nursing and health science. It will be located right next to the Giselle, is that how you say that? Library, and the Hillary Hall. This building will contain a lecture hall, classroom space, faculty offices, nursing lab space, including state-of-the-art nursing skills, and an assessment lab. Also a 7-lab simulation center, a debrief, and similar rooms. The college is requesting the conditional use permit to allow for this new building to be built within the residential 2 district. And variance was granted on 6/6/23 from the zoning board for the height of the building. It's over the maximum height allowed in the residential district.
Mr. Chair, before we begin, I just wanted to, for the record, state that my husband is an employee of the college. I spoke with Joanne. We don't have any personal or financial benefit from this, so just for the record, I wanted it to be stated that, you know, he is an employee, but I don't feel that there's a need to recuse myself from this application unless other board members feel differently.
Everybody good with Colleen sitting in on this application? Anybody who is opposed to her, speak now. Okay, Colleen, you're in.
So the
So,
first
we
thing
need a motion, Barbara?
for, the motion would be to find the application complete with no regional impact.
So moved.
Second.
Wait, I have a question. It is no regional impact? Are we boarding Bedford?
Not this plan, no. That's all in Goffstown.
Okay, thank you.
There's a pretty big buffer between here and the Bedford.
Motion's been made by Barbara, seconded by Brian, to find this application complete, ready for review with no regional impact. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Excuse me. Any more questions for staff? For engineering, have any comments? that are germane right now, or would you like to wait until we get into it?
Just wait.
Okay. All right. For the record, gentlemen.
Can I just ask a question of Joanne before we... Joanne, is it my understanding from looking at this that they're literally taking down a building and building another building on the same footprint?
Yes, but the building will be larger because.
But they've already got a variance for that portion.
For the height.
For the height.
They did.
But as far as the footprint,
The footprint is the same.
it's exactly the same.
No, it's
larger.
different.
Oh, it's a little larger, okay.
Let me see, I have it right
All right, so yeah, just so that can get addressed as to what the change.
The existing two-story, I don't have the footprint measurements. It was larger as far as, it was 19,672 square feet, but I don't have the footprint
That's the present,
measurements.
the yellow is.
Oh, all right, okay, thanks.
Yeah, roughly the footprint, sorry, just to address that question, the rough footprint's roughly 20% larger than the previous building.
Okay.
All right, so Jim Robinson from TF Moran Engineering. With me here tonight is Jonathan Woodcock from St. Anselm's College, Facilities Director, and Mike Murphy of Valley Presenter Architects. Again, Joanne gave a great introduction there, but just to recap, this is the proposed nursing and health science building. And it's located at the site of the existing Poisson Hall building. And if I could just orientate you on the site a little bit. Here's Alumni Hall, is the big tall building in the middle of campus. Poisson Hall is this one right here. So College Road is the main drive. There's the walls like entrance. I have the College Road through here. Geisel Library is the building next door to us. There's another main entrance drive there, and then the Abbey Church. This is the Monks Abbey here. Then on the other side, Hillary Hall, Bertrand Hall, Brady Hall, and the Student Center, the Gene Complex. So this is the main academic quad area. So this building will be located on the main quad. And the primary site access through here goes around this through the parking area down here, and this is called Runlet Hill Road through here. So it moves down and comes back out down to Runlet Hill, and this is of course Anderson Drive on this side. So the big lawn is this space between St. Anselm Hall and the Abbey, Geisel, and Poisson. Again, we're tearing down a two-story building, put up a three-story building. We're about Poisson Hall, very functional building. I think it was built in the 1950s, correct me if I'm wrong. But very functional building. The decision to tear that building down was not taken lightly. The town strongly feels this is the correct site for this building. Up at the front end of the campus, and again focusing on an academic quad core of the campus with the residential buildings and the athletic facilities further out, and the parking further out, and keeping the core of the campus pedestrian friendly. Not a lot of parking, not a lot of cars, push the parking, the outer edges, and provide that pedestrian friendly academic core to maintain the integrity of the campus. But it's sort of been built. So again, we did receive a variance.
Could you tell us the numbers just for the record?
Sure.
What the present building is and what the new number is?
The maximum building height in the R2 zone is 35 feet. This is the north facade you're looking at here. College Road is right here, coming into the page. So the tallest peak is parallel to College Road on the east facade. The maximum building height is 66 feet to the peak of the roof. The mean height, according to the zoning definition, is to the mean height of the roof. That's 56 feet and a few inches. And then the flat portion of the roof.
That doesn't matter, because that's not the variances
Yeah.
for the total
So
height.
flat portion is in the northwest corner of the roof of the building.
Thank you.
If looking at the plan, to answer Barbara's question, it looks like there's about a 300-foot
addition to the foundation, square foot of the foundation itself.
Right.
Would that be correct, about 300?
Yes. Mike Rensinger. So basically, the configuration of the footprint works. We did expand the overall footprint a little bit. Again, we're going from a 2-story structure to a 3-story structure based on the program goals of the school. And that's kind of driving. And to sort of speak to what Jim was showing here with the height variance, we were very respectful to other structures that are on campus. We feel that in selecting this site, we were cognizant of how close that is to the quad. That is a very important fixture on campus, and also not encroaching closer here to St. Anselm's Drive. Also respectful as to how close we are coming here to the north. So that was those were the main key factors as we looked at defining what that footprint was.
Thank you.
And come back to your earlier question, Mr. Chairman, the existing building is 35 feet high to the peak of the roof.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we are seeking a number of waivers. I'll get into those more in a few minutes. Both lines here are the property lines. So the parcel 341 is this main piece of land here with most of the academic buildings on it. This adjacent parcel with the Abbey Church, owned by the monks. They also own a couple other pieces over here. There are a number of parcels that make up the campus empire. In fact, the campus owns all of these parcels on the other side of St. Anselm's Drive as well, and owns a couple parcels. This is the Goffstown Bedford Town line on the south side here. Owns a couple of parcels on the Bedford side as well, including recently acquired Clark Farm parcel, which this parking lot here is located on that Clark Farm parcel. Excuse me. And a number of athletic, and again, this is Runlet Hill Road that passes through the site. West of Runlet Hill, there's a number of athletic facilities in Bedford. This is the Manchester Town line. This is the Institute of Politics right here. So the Manchester Town line is just east of the Institute of Politics. So we're located right down in the corner of town. So that's the site orientation. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about the functions of the proposed building. And your floor plans are behind here. So, three rendering sheets too, and floor plan.
Okay, so this is the ground level, or level 1, and the main purpose and function of this space is assembly. It's all common use spaces for student spaces, classrooms on this wing, and I reference this wing because this wing is kind of is a core element as it goes up to the floors above. Here on the west side, which is going to be close to the Geisel Library, sorry for reorientate you. East side, College Road. The main quad is here down page south. The Geisel Library is here on the west elevation. And so we have the utility spaces here, kind of creating a utility core. Moving up to the second floor. The main function of the second floor is the simulation center, which is the key part of what this nursing program is trying to energize. So the majority of these spaces, there are some student commons here, but the majority of all of this is going to be the simulation center, which is predominantly just for the nursing students and the new program that they are bringing on here at St. Anselm's College. And as we move up to the third floor, this is, again, focused back here on this bar, which is all classroom and lab space. And
then as you sprinkle this way, this is the faculty component. One of the key program elements that we were challenged with is providing office space for the faculty, but also having this interaction with students, because they want to be able to have a very open dialogue as part of one of the main mantras of the school. So this is predominantly one of the core programs that brought us to a 3-story piece, is being able to stack all these components. First floor being of the assembly, the second floor being predominantly for nursing students, that's kind of their floor, and the third floor being the office space.
Anthony? Besides?
We showed you kind of the entry perspective here. You can see from College Roads here. I mean, the material vernacular that we tried to incorporate is very common on campus. A red brick facade. We're using a ground face or split face ground block at the lower levels. We will have some infill panels of and it could be a metal that could patina over time, because that's a very common material on campus. Again, want to have their heritage elements is what we're after. And this would be again College Road, making a spin turn here to the south elevation, where we have the strong presence to the quad, which is important. We want to be able to have a dialogue between activity that's happening here on the quad and this large punched opening here, which is going to be a glazing opportunity to see what's happening inside. So that big auditorium space that we're talking about, the live action, what's happening with the student life, you'll be able to have that interaction between inside and outside is a key element that we brought and we felt was important. And as we talked about how not only does the student experience happen on the outside, but the inside, and how this building relates to other buildings on campus.
And that's the library shown on the left there.
So again, when we looked at the archetype or geometries, the gable forms are very predominant on campus, so we tried to stay in that same scale. We felt that even though this is a 3-story structure, it's very in keeping with the presence on a corner for the quad. You're familiar with the other piece of campus. So this is the view that really is important. It's
Can
not
I ask
also
a question on the prior one? I'm sorry,
Sure.
I don't mean to interrupt. There's a very prominent vertical feature there. What is that?
So that was back up your question.
That's the repelling wall?
Yeah, right. So just as much as we want to identify this as this is one of the main entrances, or we call it the main entrance into the building. These large elements, and once you go to the next page, I'll show you as well. This is also where the stair tower is. So as you think about the plan, you're trying to introduce a lot of light into the interior of the building. So we feel like, health and wellness, student activity, all of those components that promote a strong learning environment and a place of activity for students is what we're after. So this large vertical element here is actually the stairwell behind that. And then this is the north elevation, but also a very important perspective when it comes to how this building is viewed from the outside. And I say outside because it's just outside of campus on St. Anselm Drive. Again, going back to the comment about these vertical pieces, again, those are stair elements. Stair element here, but then this is an opportunity for getting light within all the corridors that talked about that classroom bar that I was pointing out earlier. One thing that we are being very sensitive to is the view of the rooftop equipment that will be on this roof. So we're making a concerted effort to not only push the equipment as far back into the plan as possible, so the view angles from St. Anselm Drive is minimal. I can't say there won't be anything because there will be. And then the
The lawn there is about 3 390 feet wide from the road back to the building, so the roof element's going to be set back quite a ways. It's going to be, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and again, if you're approaching from the, driving up San Jose Drive to make a left onto College Road, your view range would the rooftop equipment would be obstructed because this form would block that, and as you're coming from the south, the west, you'd also have that view opportunity. But again, trying to minimize the impact of what that looks like. I think that this perspective shows, you know, our intent to try to stay within the scale of the adjacent buildings. I mean, back here is Alumni Hall, and as you know, Geisel's here, and as you start to work towards the Abbey, try not to be an overbearing component to the fabric of what that new entrance is. And that was one of the real, I guess, decisions that we made for selecting this site, is it has an opportunity to really present itself for the school as the gateway, truthfully, and the nursing program that is a part of St. Anselm College, being able to bring that to the community. So wanted to really provide this opportunity for an anchor piece for the campus. The two-story structure that was here had a purpose, and we don't want to lose sight of that. We feel like this replacement is an enhancement for the school and a better opportunity to provide a great experience for the fabric of the college.
And one last point, if I may, on that slide is those trees are faded back to really give you a sense of what the building's going to look like. But when you're driving by, the main thing you see is the trees. So that's what, especially coming from the east, that's what really is going to jump out and hit you. You'll have a hard time seeing the building, unfortunately, in my perspective.
Nothing wrong with trees.
Okay. That's it. All right. So start off with back to the civil side. Again, here's the quad, here's College Road, here's Geisel Library. We have a large pedestrian plaza at the main entrance. That's going to be constructed with porous pavers. The sidewalk is on the opposite side of the road, so we have crosswalks coming in for pedestrian access. Again, main entrance, service entrance, secondary main entrance, service entrance, service entrance. So, and those vertical elements that you saw on the facade are sticking out here, and they kind of shield the doorways of the main entrances. Here's the main entrance, and that's underneath that canopy, coming out with that vertical facade going all the way across, for a vertical facade element, covering the main entrance there. So all the entrances are covered and shielded from the wind, which I think is great. So the accessible routes, the accessible parking is going to be located here in between Geisel and the new building. The accessible route down from the parking is ramps down from here to the main entrance, or you can loop around and go to the side entrance, and also from here. So from here, pretty much except for this level landing in the middle, it's a 5% pitch down to get from there. And the proposed building floor slab is built at pretty much roughly the same elevation as the existing building, and that existing building and proposed building are 6 feet lower than the floor of Geisel Library. So we have a little bit of a grade difference to accomplish there, and that's wraps the pedestrians out here. Likewise, on the College Road side, there's about a 6 or 8 foot drop in the corner down here, and so we have some stairs here, and again the accessible route goes out this way. That's ADA access. Landscaping, let's jump to the landscaping plan. Because it's the north side of the building that's moving out, and the south facade pretty much lines up with Gadsden Library and the existing, and the east and west facades pretty much, most of the expansion is this way. We unfortunately have to lose all the trees on the north facade. We'll be replacing those. There's a couple trees on the west side that we are going to try and save. I think we've decided that we have to lose these two, the plans that were submitted that show losing these, keeping these 3 trees on the quad side. These are the ones we're talking about removing for crane access and construction access. So there's a couple more trees that we've decided are going to have to go that we were trying to save, that it's not going to work out. And then, so we have shrubs, and then there's, mentioned before, 5% grade wrapping around here. So to separate these two sidewalks, we have a retaining wall here that warps into a little accent wall. And we have a 24-inch accent wall around the pedestrian plaza as well for seating. This is not a retaining wall. This is just an accent wall, and this retaining wall kind of warps into an accent wall at the last few feet, last 10 feet. And those will be concrete walls with a brick facade, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
To
in
match the-
kind with what the facade materials are at the end of the building.
So shrubbery around the accent wall here, shrubbery around the retaining wall, above the retaining wall here, shrubbery here, and then a few proposed trees to replace the ones we're keeping. Going to try and keep all the trees along the College Road side as well. To utilities. So this is the existing Poisson Hall. There's a sewer line that serves Geisel Library and Poisson Hall that runs behind here and down into Brooklyn Court. And then there's a water line behind that as well. And then further out into the field, there's an electric line and a fiber optic data core for the site. So that was one of our key constraints, is to not disturb the electric. We wouldn't mind disturbing the water. We ended up not disturbing the water, but we didn't want to disturb those electric and data hub lines out there. So that really was part of what drove the decision to go to 3 stories rather than 2. So the sewer line needs to be relocated. So that's end up being, so again, here's that existing sewer. Here's our proposed relocation, shooting out around the back. The building has gas and water, both in proposed and existing. In terms of drainage, I mentioned already the porous paver here. Chunk of new proposed impervious surface for the retaining wall for the AD access here, and a large infiltration, underground infiltration field in the field. That'll be we'll have to raise the grade slightly of the front field to accommodate that, and to accommodate cover over the pipe getting to it. But we'll provide a catch basin here to funnel water from the field into the drainage system. But primarily the water that gets to this infiltration system comes from the roof of the proposed building. There's some areas of the roof that don't get to that drainage system, shooting off the south and east facades. Now the existing drainage system along College Road is located actually on the upstream side of the curb, not in the road itself, and that keeps in the winter keeps water from flowing into the road and crossing the road and refreezing, so it prevents icing. So those catch basins are, they do provide a series of the main drainage function, but they also prevent the icing in the winter. So that's why they're located behind the curb, to keep this water from flowing onto the road and refreezing during the winter time. So switching over to this view, and that drainage line along College Road crosses from the main quad at a 6-inch pipe, 10-inch pipe all along College Road until it gets to the gutter line of St. Anselm Drive. It's then 12 inches from this driveway down to Runlet Hill Road. Upside is to 18 inches, down to the residential quad down here, Marsky Hall, crosses through the parking lot at, should I have these numbers on the next sheet? So I don't mess it all up. 24 inches through the parking lot. There's another 24-inch pipe that comes in from this detention basin. The two 24s come together and create a 36-inch, and the outfall of the drainage system is down here behind Institute of Politics and the residential quad here. So that's where our primary drainage outfall is. That picks up most of the site. There's a little bit of the, I would say, south and east corners that runs over land and shoots down this roadway to the Bertrand Hall courtyard. And that gets picked up in the drainage system that was constructed with Living Learning Commons and discharges overland, crosses under College Road, under Runlet Hill Road, underground, comes to the surface briefly through here, and then gets picked up in the same drainage system that comes down Tin Eston Road. So all the drainage all comes back together down here and ends up at that 36-inch outfall. That's the drainage snapshot. And again, our infiltration system is discharging into that existing 10-inch line along College Road. Unfortunately, that College Road line is undersized. We are surcharging in the 25-year storm. Scott and I are going to have to work through that. But that is, I guess that's one of the waivers we're going to have to ask for, is for surcharging of the 25-year storm. And we're going to keep our increase in surcharge down to a minimum. I think we're at 2/10 of a foot right now.
So please explain that. You're not changing the dimensions of College Road.
Correct.
So what's this? This is a historic impact of surcharge of stormwater.
Right. Yep, it's all...
But it's not, that has nothing to do with the construction of this.
Correct. Correct. It's an existing condition where the amount of impervious area running into this, according to our HydroCAD analysis, is a little bit more than the 10-inch. It's not overtopping in the 25-year storm, but it's between the rim and the top of pipe water surface elevations.
Is that what your comment is, Scott?
Yeah, so there's quite a few existing structures that currently the water in the structure is higher than the top of the pipe, so the pipe's technically under pressure at that point. Our regs don't allow for pipes surcharging even at the 50-year storm, and the existing it's happening at the 25. And so the new design actually increases it slightly. I think there's even a structure that's overtopping at the 50, like it's coming out of the catch basin. I don't know if this is happening, like if this has been observed to actually be an existing problem, but your analysis is showing that the water's coming out of the catch basin. And I believe in the proposed condition, it's a foot higher out of the catch basin, which, I mean, that means your road's flooding at that point. So I don't quite know if it's really what's happening out there or not.
Yeah, a couple of things. That 1 foot increase in the 50-year storm is impossible because it would it gets to the rim and it onto the road, and then in the next catch basin downstream picks it up because it all goes down to the next one, assuming that catch basin has capacity.
Yeah, it means the water's not. There's more water than the system can handle. Is what that's saying.
And it all flows downhill, and if it doesn't fit in the pipes, it flows in the gutter and still gets to the same point.
And I don't know if you've been on St. A's Drive in the winter, but it gets a ton of ice coming off of the sidewalk there and everything. So any more water coming down that hill is more water and ice for DPW to have to deal with.
Right.
So my comments are, I don't want any additional water on the road. I mean,
You're right, and
it's a hazard to the traveling public at that point.
Right.
So,
and we're meeting pre versus post in that the Damocles sword, the double-edged sword here, is the more water we funnel into our infiltration system, Well, that's water that used to just flow overland to this gutter line and out onto St. Anselm's Drive. So when we get to the infiltration system, any overflow in the 25-year and the 50-year storm passes into our drainage pipe, and now we have more surcharge. So do we want it underground or do we want it above ground? It all adds up in the end. It all goes to the same place. It all the same discharge type point.
Yeah, unfortunately, our
Yeah.
system on St. A's is undersized. Your system's undersized, and so it's not a good situation.
Yeah, it all handles the 10-year storm. Well, there's no surcharging. We're meeting pre versus post in the net. Yes, Scott and I have some issues to work through on the surcharge. Figure out exactly how we're going to balance that out. We have to add more units to the system. It's already a very large.
It is a large system.
System for this type of development.
I was surprised how large it needed to be just for that building, to be honest.
And plus with the papers, yeah.
All right, Kimberly?
I just wanted to clarify something, David. I think you're trying to, you tried to clarify something, but it's not true. You are increasing the footprint of the existing building. There is new impervious area.
Correct. There is new impervious area. Again, the footprint of it is going up by about 20% relative to the existing. We're adding more sidewalks around the perimeter. In the existing condition, the sidewalk just goes to the main entrance and doesn't loop around the back like this. And this exists in the existing condition. This does not exist in the existing condition. So there's some additional concrete sidewalks. And then this is this little strip. You can see the dashed line is the existing edge of pavement. And this solid line is the proposed edge of pavement. So we're widening this driveway to the back here. There's an existing driveway there, and that we're widening that slightly. And that's another waiver issue, by the way. We're only proposing a one-way, well, it's two-way really, but one vehicle at a time access to our two parking spaces for our ADA access. So that would normally be a 22-foot road.
So is that another waiver?
That is a waiver.
There's a comment that you need two-way.
Yeah.
I have another comment too then. I know we have porous pavers in our requirements that they're allowed, but does the college have other porous pavement, and do they understand that that needs meticulous maintenance, or that just becomes a screen that gets blocked and impervious? I mean, there's maintenance requirements with those porous pavers, or they just become a sheet of ice?
For sure, yeah. There's going to be a maintenance agreement prepared. There's a O&M manual built into the drainage report, and the college has an excellent maintenance staff, very professional maintenance staff, and don't know that there's existing porous pavement on site. There's not, yeah. So, but
They're great ideas when they work, but they have to be maintained to work.
For sure.
Can I ask a question about the ADA spaces? And I just, because, and I hadn't realized before, but as you're pointing out, that wall that's being built, so someone going in and parking those ADA spaces is still coming all the way up that walkway and then going all the way back down to the building. It just seems like, especially if you're looking for a waiver on the driveway with moving those spaces, if you just said that existing tree is going to be going away instead of adding that existing driveway and moving.
These trees.
Yeah,
This
so
tree right
can
here
you
is-
move those spaces closer to where, so that they're not, you see what I mean, where people are parking, coming up the path and then back down to the building? If you move the spaces closer,
Yeah.
you might get rid of that driveway waiver too.
So, two reasons why the parking's where it is. One is this tree right here, labeled as 422 on the plan, is a 36-inch redwood. Very rare tree. It's the only species of its kind on the campus. It's a very rare tree for New Hampshire. And that's definitely a goal of the project, is to save that tree. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. And I have some pictures here of that as well. If I can pass these around, Mr. Chairman. So could you pass those down, and Mike, pass those down, please? I have 9 copies. I think I counted correctly. So that's tree is shown in those pictures as well. So that's one of the goals. And then the other reason why the parking's where it is It's at grade to serve Geisel Library as well. Currently, there's no ADA parking immediately adjacent to the library. So it's intended to serve both buildings. And so the access, yes, you're right, the access is a little bit circuitous, longer and windy to get down to the proposed building. It's very short and easy to get into the library. So that's our thinking there. I should point out there's an existing retaining wall over here as well, and that these are leaded bollards along this rear of the parking area, and additional bollards on this side to protect vehicles from going over either retaining walls on either side.
Scott, I'd like to circle back to the drainage.
Yes. Is the surcharging only happening on their site, or does the surcharge happen within the town's drainage system?
I believe our analysis stops at the property line, so we haven't analyzed the town system.
Didn't analyze our system.
But
well, I think it's a pretty
pretty
important
likely
decision.
It's pretty likely that it is.
I think it's a pretty important decision. If the surcharging is happening within the town system, then I think some remediation needs to be discussed for an off-site or
To
something.
possibly remove some
An
of that
off-site
flow.
improvement to increase the drainage on St. Anselm's Drive, to at least accept their water. If they want to have surcharging on their site and have their streets flooded, that's okay with me. But if the town road and the sidewalks are becoming surcharged and flooded, then I think then we need to address off-site improvements as part of an application for a project like this.
I'm not necessarily saying that the current icing condition is entirely from this one area. A lot of it is just, it comes off that hill and comes onto our sidewalk.
Well, that's another, then
So-
that's a different drainage issue that has to be
Yeah.
addressed
So, yeah, it's
for surface water.
It's private, it's technically private water coming into the right of way.
Right. So that's something I think you have to discuss with them for remediation for the water that's coming across the sidewalk. And we should know for a fact whether the town's drainage system is surcharging or not.
Well, but I'm not, Mr. Chair, I'm not saying we shouldn't know that, but I think what I also heard is that the town system is not adequate.
It is, it's, like he just said, it's 10 inches.
Well, when was the
into
town
that
system
section.
built?
It was probably built long, long before we were here. So- Before me.
So the point becomes is that as development has increased in the area, not only for the college, but housing and everything else happens, then the drainage becomes overwhelmed after all.
I am not disputing that point. As a matter of fact, I think it needs to be recognized. It's like when you have somebody come in to a failed intersection, what is their responsibility for the intersection when it's already failed? If you've got a traffic engineer that says our impact on the intersection doesn't change the rating of this intersection. So why can you assess us for the charge? I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be addressed, but I'm hearing, I'm not quite sure on the percentage increase on the impervious surface here that's happening. And, you know, I'm relying on you to say whether the drainage around it is sufficient. It sounds like there are some issues that need to be resolved that aren't huge, but need to be resolved. But if now we're going to start talking about, well, there's water coming down the hill onto the sidewalk, that they need to do some remediation from, I mean, I think that requires an entirely different study, because you'd have to do a current condition study on the town right-of-way and sidewalk.
Yeah, I'm sure all of you have seen the ice. And
Yeah.
It's substantial, and we sometimes bring heavy equipment out there to try and scrape it and everything. And,
I think that should be part of the discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Please do.
New discussion here. At first blush, a building that's twice as large, to a layman says that's more students being educated, more enrollment. And that leads down to a trail. Are you accommodating, if there are increased enrollment, are you accommodating parking? cafeteria, dormitory, would be a further impact on the sewer system. So what is this building doing to your enrollment?
I'm not sure that's germane to the discussion.
It would increase their demand for parking. It might,
That's up to the college.
it might increase their demand for dormitories, and are they accommodating an increased enrollment? But
The letter said that they are going to increase enrollment.
Okay,
They are? They are not.
We're not planning to increase enrollment, no.
So,
Yep.
I wanted that in the record.
Yeah.
That's-
So there is an existing nursing program on campus that's done at Getabois Hall, and we're relocating the nursing program up from there. The nursing program might get bigger, but that's going to come at the cost of some other program. We are doing there's a bit of a community outreach program here. Where we're hoping to educate some off-campus nurses as well. It's not a huge program, and it's off-peak. It's in the evenings. So, I mean, that in terms of that parking, that's the biggest thing we're talking about. Where that's and that's a very minor component. The majority of the program is the on-campus, and of course the college can't predict the percentage of students that live on campus versus off campus. But the intent is we're not increasing enrollment.
Joanne, can I ask you a question just as it relates to parking? I know that there weren't any parking calculations on here, and I mean, this is obviously only, one building with all the parking offered on campus. Do we usually ask the college to include, I know on a normal site plan, that calculation would be there. Do we look for an overall, there's 1,000 spaces on campus, they need 700, or?
Several years ago, the college decided that they were going to have more of a walkable campus.
Yep.
So they removed any parking, except for the handicapped accessible, any parking that was surrounding the buildings. They do have some room for their trucks, their work trucks that they use. And so they did come in with an overall parking plan that the planning board had agreed to, that their enrollment has been pretty much stable, and that's the parking plan that they agreed to.
So maybe for the purposes of this plan, like a note that references that parking plan, just so if someone's saying.
Yes, that would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to point out these yellow areas on the map here are all the parking spaces. This 319 car lot down here is relatively new, I forget, within 10 years. Was just built, so they have been increasing the parking on campus as they develop. So.
So you piqued my curiosity with the 36-inch redwood. Can you point to where it is on the site plan? And is it illustrated in one of the photos?
Sure.
I would think redwoods to live here.
That's on the site plan right here, inside the corner of Geisel Library.
Okay.
So about halfway between the corners of the two buildings.
Yes, I think photo 9.
Photo 9, you think?
Yeah, because that's tree 422, and I think that's what's labeled on here.
One point, Alumni Hall, I forgot to make, sorry, jumping way back to the height variance. Guys, Alumni Hall is the tallest building on campus, and that's 72 feet tall to the peak of the roof line. The clock tower is a bit higher, we don't have a measurement on that.
If Phil was here, we'd know what the height of the clock tower was.
So he didn't answer your question about which tree is.
He's looking for it.
Photo number 9.
Photo number 9?
That's all right.
Geisel Library.
The one on the top?
Yeah, there's Geisel Library, and this is the big tree in the middle of the picture.
It doesn't look like a redwood.
It doesn't look like her.
It doesn't
I mean, it
look
looks
like the
like a
ones
nice
that are out
tree.
west.
It's not the,
All right,
that's what they told me.
we're starting to stall here. Let's move this discussion along here.
That's
Barbara?
Yeah.
You had your hand up too.
No, yeah.
That's early in leaf.
Does staff represent that this is ready for approval tonight?
No,
Okay.
no.
So-
We're recommending if you continue.
All right, so I guess I'm thinking at this point, I sort of got the overview, do the public comment, and let's continue this, but I would like to ask a question. because in the staff report, and this is why I was sort of confused, on page 18 you have approval conditions, but they don't seem to include all the comments and conditions that came in. Is that because you're anticipating that this will be continued and that
Yes,
most
this
of
is-
those are going to be taken care of? Because that was confusing to me when I looked at it.
When I
Yeah.
come up with some things that are, the
Boilerplate.
constant template, I keep them on there just so I don't lose them later on. But yes, there'll be more
So
added to
staff
it.
recommendation is that this should be continued.
Continue to, where is it? Not April, what am I saying? August.
August 10th you
10th.
had.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that the meeting we usually have in August? Because we usually cancel a meeting in August.
Yes, that's
the
the
second meeting?
first meeting in
Okay.
August. The second would be, we wouldn't be holding a hearing in August, second meeting.
What, in your opinion, is outstanding that has to be brought back to the next meeting so we know what to expect?
Well, I think the biggest item is the drainage that Scott needs to sit down and go over with them. And then,
Unfortunately, we didn't get to the Conservation Commission in time.
Yeah, they need to go see
Missed
them.
that, unfortunately. So apologize for that. So the Concom advisory, there are wetlands on the site.
So, and we're going to need a waiver request for the subsurface issue and the ADA access issue?
Yep,
Yes.
and
We're
also,
I only saw 2 waivers on the
I know,
sheet.
we're gonna
so
need 2
there's
more.
there's actually
Three
3 additional.
no
What's the
biofiltration.
third one?
The subcharging of the 25-year storm.
So,
The
before we go any farther, we need to go back into the time clock here, Barbara, for the motion to find this was complete and ready to review. We did not include waivers for discussion purposes only, because otherwise our motion to find, we always add them when we talk about, we have waivers on the table. So I don't know if we want to amend a motion at this time to find the application was complete and ready to review with no regional impact, or if that's not even necessary at this time. But I know we always include that when there are waivers. And
Yeah, I
waivers were-
think you can add that to the motion that you had made regarding no regional
I make a
impact.
motion to amend the acceptance to include waivers as presented and as needed after discussion.
So the waivers for acceptance purpose only.
Right.
Yeah.
Who had seconded that original? Was that,
It matters, we're going to have to vote on it one way or another anyway.
No, Brian actually did it.
I did?
Yep. So Barbara, you're amending the motion, but do you agree, Brian?
Yes.
So there should be 5 waivers altogether.
Well, it
The
doesn't,
two-
we're not going to count it, just
Yeah,
any
just say
waivers that are brought up. are
No,
for
I just
discussion
wanna
No,
make
purposes.
sure we're all on the
I've only
same
got 2
page.
and she's got 3.
That's what I'm
So,
saying. We don't usually list them, we just use them.
No, for
in-
purposes of the motion, we're all set.
no, yeah.
So a motion to amend the motion to find this ready to review. You're going to amend it to include waivers for discussion purposes only. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. All right, now we can continue with our,
Okay, so there should be 5 waivers. The 2 that are already listed. Number 3 would be surcharging of the 25-year storm. Number 4 would be the width of the driveway. And number 5 would be the maintenance agreement and O&M for report for the porous pavement.
they want a waiver from that?
No, we were not gonna pursue the waiver of the maintenance agreement.
No, I didn't think we would allow that.
You're just going to do the maintenance agreement.
But we will,
Yes.
yeah, we'll do the
Okay.
maintenance agreement.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
add that to the conditions.
All right, well, so there's waivers that are beyond what's listed, but
I'm sorry,
they're all inclusive in the motion.
the last waiver was no biofiltration. We have infiltration instead of biofiltration. That was the last waiver.
I knew there was another one, I couldn't remember.
And the drainage study was supplied and reviewed, Scott?
Yes.
Good.
can I, and I'm not an engineer, if it's surcharging in the 25-year storm, is it also surcharging in the 1500?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not
I assumed,
Yeah.
we said 25, so.
It's not surging, it's squirting through the frame and grate.
It-
It's like a fountain.
It's a water feature.
It's a water feature, yeah. Kids can go out there and walk.
Undesirable water feature.
put lights on it, and you can call it the Bellagio of Goffstown.
Once every 50
Do we
years,
have,
the
does
kids
this
can
board
have
have
a boat
any,
parade.
does this board have any recommendations to the applicant for anything that they did see, didn't like to see, would like to see differently, so they have some instruction prior to the next meeting? Please?
We still have public comment?
I know.
Okay.
Just making sure that
Gotcha.
we have everybody moving in the right direction before we move to that. Nothing? All right, you can stay in your chairs for now, folks. I'm gonna open the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak on this matter, it's your time to come up and speak at this time. Seeing no
Eric, just hanging
one.
out today?
Is this the last open meeting? Last public hearing?
No, public hearings continue through all meetings. It's suspended until the next meeting.
No,
It's not
no,
over.
we don't have a public comment period. We just have comments on
We have
application.
public hearings for applications
Right.
that are in front of us, not for any other issue.
Right. All right, so there's no public comment?
No public comment on this application at this time. Public comment will be reopened at the next meeting that we have in August. Do you have any questions for us at this time, gentlemen?
No, sir.
Motion
Okay.
to continue to August 10th.
You?
Second. Dave, second.
Motion by Barbara, seconded by Dave to continue this application to August the 10th, 23. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We'll see you in August.
Sewer Commission will see us August 8th, and you'll see us August 10th. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
What date did we set? August 8th or August 10th?
We're the 10th.
The 10th. I thought I wrote down for it. Okay, the packet is finished. We're gonna go back to correspondence and action items.
We have planning board rules and procedures.
We skipped number 4, which is a review of the planning board rules and procedures. Joanne, could you tell everybody what's going on? Thank you, folks.
Yes, so initially we had started to look at this because the board had a discussion about whether or not they wanted to implement doing the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the meeting. And so the rules hadn't been updated since August 14th, 2014. So I just went through them and I redlined just a few things to make sure that we're actually, having the rules as to what we're actually doing. So there's just a few minor changes. If you'd like me to go through them, I can do that. Okay. On page 2 of 8, under members, I don't know exactly when, but a few years ago you had changed the alternate membership to 2 members versus 5. And the rules were never changed. So that was something that's already been approved, but just didn't make it into the rules. Page 4 of 8, it's crazy looking because the formatting, but once I accept the changes, it'll go to the correct place. But under number 3, it's just a correction of punctuation, and I tried to straighten out to have it look in alignment of number 7, but it just kind of messed it up even further, but I'll fix that once we have it printed. On page 6 of 8.
Can you back up to page 4? Because
Sure.
I don't know, only because I saw this and I don't know that I've ever paid attention to this. What is the 2/3 vote thing? Is there anything else that we have that's a 2/3 vote?
What
Where
number
is
are you
that?
looking
It's
under?
7E.
7E. Oh, I think that's just something that you had in there from a long time ago. You can just put majority vote if you'd prefer.
I don't recall ever coming up with what the 2/3 is, so.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are other things that are by vote of the board, so might as well be consistent.
Okay.
What line are you reading that in, Barbara? Because I'm not
E,
reading.
you go through the
7E.
the
Oh,
red
E,
lines.
okay.
And I have a question, Joanne, about Article 8. so you're going to 6, but on 5, it's the meeting order. So would the Pledge of Allegiance potentially go into or be inserted into after A, be B, the new B?
I would think after A, and if that's
Yeah.
what you're deciding to do, I haven't really gotten any complete direction from what the board would like to do with that. But yes, we would, if you agree to do that, we would like to include it in this version of the update.
We'll come back to that as soon as you finish your overall review.
Under page 6 of 8, under number 4, we just changed the name of the development regulations.
Yep.
They formerly were called subdivision and site plan. We just changed the title of the planning director's position. Same with number 5 and 6. And under number 8, I just changed it to shall make their presentation.
But isn't that order opposite of what we do? Don't we do the staff presentation
Yeah,
first
we
and
do.
then the applicant?
I think A and B should be switched.
They do too. I think they're out of order.
Okay. Sure, we can do that. And page 7 of 8, it's just having to do with the title of the position. And then on the last page, number 8 of 8, it's again, I was fooling with the formatting and I made it worse, so.
All right,
So
we'll
much
see it
for
when it's
that.
all finished. All right, so let's go back to Brian's
Can we
question.
go back to 8 first,
Okay,
please? Because
yep.
I just don't think this order
Article
of
8,
presentation, or page 6, number 8. Order of presentation during a public hearing on an application. This sort of, it's mixing apples and oranges because there's no, the public hearing is for public comment. The presentation is separate. So it's like the order of presentation of an application is staff overview, applicant representative, the planning board having an opportunity to voice questions or concerns. A public hearing then occurs where the abutters are provided the opportunity for comment.
I think abutters and the public, it just.
Right,
needs
abutters
specific
and
Yeah,
public.
right.
Because we don't call abutters separately.
Yeah.
Right. We used to, when it was if it was a really big turnout, we would go to abutters first. Yeah. And why do we have the language with appropriate responses by the applicant or the planning board? Why isn't that just a next step in the process would be further comment by?
It's actually contrary, Barbara, because when the butters make their comments, we don't respond to their
Right.
comments at
I
all.
understand that.
We
So-
take and put them into the record only.
Right, so this section needs to be sort of reworked a little bit for
Okay.
how it actually goes.
Can do that.
Okay. Because then you go into, the general public is then provided with an opportunity for comment. And then you would need to go to, the public hearing is closed, and then it goes back. Right, so it just needs to be reworked because the language sort of mixes the two things.
I think before the public hearing is closed, the applicant typically has an opportunity to, close out his presentation.
So 8 should be the order of presentation for an application, period, and then it includes everything. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on Joanne's markup on the rules of procedure?
Joanne, I just had 2 minor, and it's just statutory references on page 2 of 8, Article 3, Item 2. The RSA 773 should be 673. So that's for qualifications and term. That should be 673. And then I think there's just another typo on page 5 of 8. conflict of interest, and because I double-checked that one this week, 743, again, should be 673.
643. Okay.
Figure while we're changing it, might as well.
Anybody else? All right, we're gonna go back to page 5. Top of the list is quorum check. At this point, the request from our member is to include the Pledge of Allegiance in our procedures, and I want to find out what the rest of the board thinks about it, and if everybody is favorable, or a majority should be favorable, then we will follow the majority rule.
I have no problem with that.
So we'll start with Collis, who already stated his piece. I have no problem with it.
I have no problem.
You brought it up, you have no problem with it.
Correct.
I'm fine with it. It's sort of startling to me, recognizing that all these other boards are doing it and we're not. It's never sort
Colleen?
of crossed
Yeah, I'm
my
good with
mind.
it.
David?
Board's happy, I'm happy.
So, at this point, we have to insert it in the appropriate place in the meeting order line up there. And then once we vote on this as our new document, then we will begin the Pledge of Allegiance as a matter of procedure for meetings in the future. Anything else?
Not
Excuse
for
me.
this, no.
Okay, we're gonna go to 7. There's a memo from Jack Shepherd, building inspector, regarding the Walton Farm.
It's the second page of the agenda. That's on the table tonight.
Oh, here it is.
Joanne, I'll let you read it into the record so that it's done. It's not washed over.
Okay, so this is from Jack Shepherd, the building inspector. He says, "Last month I visited the Walton Farm at 182 Goffstown Back Road, map 6, lot 17. I did not notice any violations for selling bark mulch or stone or any other landscaping materials. However, I did let the owner of the property know that no processing can be done without the approval of a site plan with the planning board. Regards, Jack Shepherd."
Okay, so that's the official word that,
And, yes, and I did send this to Mr. Walton, and I haven't heard anything back.
so that's the official word from our zoning,
They can store it there, they just can't process it there.
Yeah.
from our zoning and code enforcement officer. So at this point, the ball, I guess, is in your court for how you want to proceed. This is the word from the town. And beyond that, I don't believe the planning board has any statement to make at this time, other than should processing of equipment, of materials be done, they would have to come back for an approved site plan. So at this point, I know you're not satisfied with it, so this is what the board members have. I assume board members accept the code enforcement officer's decision at this time. It's a decision made by him based on his position as code enforcement officer. All right, do we have any other, we don't have any other correspondence or action item. I think we covered all of them here at the end. Our next meeting on the 27th is the Penny Road subdivision.
Correct.
And a multi-family site plan on East Union Street. Joanne, could you?
Yes, that.
No, we're not supposed to talk about these things.
I can just tell you
No, we're not talking about
where
it.
it is.
I'm just
but-
telling everybody
okay.
what it is. They'll find out about it when they get it.
We'll get a packet that'll have a map and lot. We'll figure it out.
Does anybody have anything else for this board that was not included on the agendas that at this time, board members, they would like to bring up? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
I think we're at that point, aren't we? Am
I
I
don't know,
wrong?
we're sort of lost without Phil on this. so-
No.
I mean,
All right, I made a motion.
Are we okay? Everybody ready? You done?
Yes,
Somebody second it.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Kimberly and seconded by Brian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, GTV.